The Falcons win over the Buffalo Bills on Monday night was one of the most impressive wins I've seen from this team in almost a decade.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the FanDuel app. And on today's Locked On Falcons, we will be reacting to the Falcons' 24-14 Monday night win, upset of the century. Or at least of the 2020s when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. And we'll break down how this game was huge, why it was huge, how the Falcons were able to pull it off, how they were able to stop Josh Allen, what this offense was able to do that we haven't quite seen from this offense in previous outings. So complete win for this football team. But before we get there, let me tell you who I am. I'm your humble hater, Mr. Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew. I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for a very long time, almost 20 years, formerly at falcfans.com, RIP. Still going strong in this illustrious podcast, and I thank each and every one of you that despite my skepticism, despite my doubts about this Atlanta Falcons team, you continue to make this podcast your first listen each and every day. And all you got to do to become an everydayer of this podcast is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So again, hater, doubter, skeptic, whatever you want to call me, I did not believe, right, in this team's likelihood of winning the game. I thought they would play a competitive game. But, if you listen to Monday morning's episode on your audio field, Sunday nights on your YouTube feed, basically I spent that episode kind of lowering the expectations for this team because I was not a believer, right? And, they I'm not going to say they've made a believer out of me, but they've certainly, they got me listening to Justin Bieber, if you understand the pun, a little bit more. I'm going to be bumping some Justin Bieber because I'm a believer, or whatever nonsense I'm getting into here, guys. It's gonna be a ridiculous show, guys. I'm just letting you know. Still riding high, so strap it. But this was as impressive a win that we've seen from this team in a very long time, right? The first half performance of this team to go up 21-7 against this Bills and play, I'm not going to say a perfect first half, but probably as close to perfection as you can realistically expect to play for this Falcon team going up against this Bills team in the first half. Pretty much not everything, but like 95% of the things that the Falcons wanted to go their way on both offense and defense went their way on offense and defense in the first half. Now, they let the Bills back in the game to a certain extent in the second half, but they were able to, put their boot on the throat when the time came in this one. And, part of the reason why I was sitting here lowering expectation was because I was nervous about building this game up. We talked about the potential of this game kind of being sort of the coming out party, the statement game, the declaration game for the Atlanta Falcons this season if they could go out there and pull off this upset. But because looking at this matchup and it's like, yeah, the Bills are a top 3 team for a reason. And the Falcons have been a middle of the pack team for a reason. And for me, a lot of it was, fans tend to get too high off of the wins and too low off of the losses. And coming off that Washington win, it felt like, that this Falcon team was probably going to come back down a little bit to earth, especially with this going up against this Bills team there's a reason, as I said, why they have been consistently one of the best teams in the league. And we didn't quite see that. And it's funny because I think coming off that Washington, I think it was the Washington game. I had a Locked On Falcons insider basically, hit me up being like, you know what? I think this Falcon team could be a contender with Philadelphia, who he was perceiving as the sort of the class of the NFC at that time. And I was just kind of like, all right, man, like, again, this is what I'm talking about, where it just feels like every time the Falcons win, people are like, oh, we're never going to lose a game again. And anytime the Falcons lose, the opposite is true, where it was like, we're never going to win a game ever again. And it's like, to me, this is the one time where the Falcons win a game, right? Where it feels like often fans treat like, oh, we're a Super Bowl contender. It's like, oh, like this is the one time where the Falcons, again, I'm not going to make that statement, but like this is the one time where you can puff up your chest and say like, yeah, I think this team legitimately can be a contender because of how impressive a performance this was against this Bills team, taking down one of the best teams in the NFL. And I'm sure there will be plenty of think pieces suggesting that the Bills maybe aren't as good as we thought they were, right? And all that stuff, who they've won, the quality of wins and all that stuff. And again, I'll let other people write those think pieces, but all that I know from the Falcons perspective, they took down one of the best teams in the league with one of the best quarterbacks in the league, with Sean McDermott going up against Sean McDermott, a proven top 10 coach. This Bills team is resilient. We talked about the stats all week long. This is a team that does not often lose 2 games in a row. They win 75% of their games coming off of a loss. And, not only are we going to get the think pieces about the Bills being, maybe not as good as overrated or whatnot, but now we're going to get those think pieces that, hey, this Falcons team is legit. And, we might be writing some of those think pieces here on this podcast. And so, I'm not ready to go like, oh, this team is a contender as of this game. But like, to me, this is kind of the first step that gets that ball rolling. If they can not just do this one thing, but you can start to string together, these multiple games, multiple wins, start to stack those wins. That's what turns you into a contender. And so to me, if this is the first step in, 3 steps, right? Like we kind of talked about it on Monday, where it's just like, if Raheem Morris is that guy, it's not just beating the Bills, but it's beating the Bills and then following up with a win against the 49ers and following up against a win against the Dolphins, et cetera, et cetera. And so my hope is that, the Falcons, this is the start of the Falcons proving that one insider correct, right? He, in my eyes, I thought he was wrong. He was just early, right? He was just earlier than the rest of us. And I'm like, we'll follow that person's lead. And maybe this is the beginning of this team being a contender. And that's the conversation we're having. And like, I did not have any confidence I had some optimism, don't get me wrong. But like, it was very, very small. It was like, oh, it's like an 8% chance that they beat the Bills. And like, I just didn't have any confidence going into this game. And again, like, I'm not ready to be like, we're one of the best, because again, we got a lot of games to be played over the course of the season, still 12 more games. And to make the playoffs, you got to win 7 of those games. And so we got, at least 7 more wins, that this Falcon team needs to pull off before we can declare this team actual playoff team this season. But again, we're one step closer to that point, and so we'll see if they can continue making those strides, and we'll talk about the strides this defense has made in terms of stopping Josh Allen. And how they were able to stop Josh Allen and make him so uncomfortable. Again, another thing that I was very skeptical that this team would be able to do. And we'll break that down as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So nobody really likes paying rent, but if you got to do it, you might as well get something for it. And that's where Built, our proud sponsor today, comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards that you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and so much more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. That's what we love about Built, right? Because we have to pay rent, and it's like, well, what's in it for me? It just feels like there's nothing in this, and I'm signing away this check every single month. And now you're getting something back, earning points every single month for travel, for, other things and whatnot. So turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. And make sure you use that link so that they know we sent you. And today's episode is also brought to you by Rougiette. We love to pump here on this podcast. And, I'm sure you guys have been using Viagra and Cialis to get your pump on. But, if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to go along with Rougiette. Rougiette's Go Long isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer when it comes to building that confidence, just like the Atlanta Falcons do with Monday night upsets. Go Long combines 2 doctor trusted medications in 1 dual action formula so that you can get hard and go the distance with effects that can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night. So get your pump on by, going to Rougiette.com to level up your confidence in the bedroom, and head to RUGIET.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Make sure you use our code so that they know we sent you. So again, Monday before the game, we talked about how I didn't think this was as favorable matchup for the Falcons defensively as maybe other people thought it was. I thought this was an unfavorable matchup for the Falcons defense because there are kind of 3 weaknesses that we had seen consistently through on the Falcons defense over the first 4 games of the season. And the Bills had the ability to check all 3 of those boxes. And it was likely that they would be able to check multiple of those boxes in that game. Those 3 boxes were the Falcons' poor run defense going up against this Bills rushing offense, having the Bills having one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in the league in Josh Allen, and the Falcons struggles to stop scrambling quarterbacks, and the fact that our pass rush took a considerable step back against teams that did not have a starting offensive tackle that was a backup, right? And the Bills have one of the best offensive lines when it comes to pass protection heading into this matchup. And while the Bills were able to somewhat check the box of running the football, they did have success running the football, especially in the second half. But it didn't necessarily break the back of the Falcons because of the early lead that the offense was able to get them. That their offense is going to be kind of their best run defense moving forward, at least until they sort of can tighten those things up. But in terms of those other 2 boxes, like the Bills did not check those. They did not expose the cracks in the armor. They were able to keep Josh Allen scrambling in check. They were able to generate effective pressure in this game. According to Next Gen Stats, the Falcons pressured Josh Allen in 15 of his 34 dropbacks for a 44% pressure rate, which is, healthy, well above that 35% average rate. They were able to dial up a number of blitzes and get after Josh Allen, make him uncomfortable. When you go back to the scrambling element, Josh Allen did finish with 42 yards rushing on 6 carries, but 24 of those 42 yards came on 1 scramble at the end of the game on the final drive. And prior to that, for essentially 58 and a half minutes or whatever it was, Josh Allen had 18 yards of rushing in this game. And so, going back later this week, we'll watch the film and see exactly how the Falcons pulled it off. But we were, going into the season expecting the increased athleticism and speed that the Falcons added in their front 7 with guys like Divine Diallo and James Pierce and Jalen Walker and all those guys, Leonard Floyd, was going to be huge to stop, opposing offenses from having, mobile quarterbacks kill them. We didn't quite see that live up to the hype in the first 4 games of the season, although they did make strides against Washington and Mariota. And so the hope was that wasn't a one-off in that regard. And it proved not to be the case against this Bills team. And so they were able to make Josh Allen uncomfortable with pressure. Looking at the stats, and at least the initial stats, it didn't seem like there was one individual player that really sort of stood out in terms of generating that pressure. The Falcons don't really have that sort of alpha pass rusher that you can say, oh, when the chips are down, this is the guy that's going to get pressure. They have more of that pass rush that kind of spreads the love. And that's kind of what they've been building, is a good team defense. And that's what you saw in this game. And so this is a sort of coming out party for this defense. Is one of the reasons why we were skeptical of this defense. Like, who is the guy? Who is the guy that you can count on in these critical situations? And it's not one guy; it's 11 guys. That's kind of the secret. One of the secrets to the Falcons' success. And so this is a game that I think certainly is going to put the Falcons on the map. That if this defense can do what they did to this Bills offense and prevent a team that in theory should have been able to expose some of these elements, these 3 weaknesses and elements that we're talking about. And this Bills offense has been consistently one of the best, depending on, if you're just looking at points scored, they've been the best offense in the NFL for 3 years running. Right. They have an elite quarterback. And again, that was part of my skepticism. It's like, oh, it's fine that you can keep Marcus Mariota in check. It's fine that you can keep JJ McCarthy in check. What are you going to do when you face Josh Allen, right? That's a different beast. And they were able to slow down an elite quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and make him uncomfortable. And that is something that how often have we said that about a Falcons defense? Really, ever, like ever, right? Like, I don't even know, man. Like, when was the last time that happened? So, the Bills' only real success offensively in these games came on the opening drives in both halves, right? Where they were to move the ball down the field and got both of their touchdowns. But after that, the Falcons defense got stop after stop after stop, right? And so, like I said, this is kind of a resume builder type for this defense, right? And this is the game that you're going to put in the big bold font at the top of the resume, so that when they look at that, flip that cover page, that's the Bills. We shut down Josh Allen. We made Josh Allen have one of the worst games he's had in quite some time, right? Or at least in the regular season, right? So that is a massive resume builder, so that it'd be fascinating to go back and look at it and how they were able to pull it off. Exactly some of the things that some of the levers that Jeff Ulbrich was trying to pull in this game, dialing up the blitzes, the man coverage on the back end, shutting down some of these receivers, and all that sort of thing. So that will be something that we will certainly unpack as the week unfolds when we get a deeper dive into the film. But absolutely a huge statement win for this defense, where they can sit there and say, yeah, all of you guys skeptical, that humble hater that is the host of the Locked On Falcons podcast that wasn't quite ready to jump on the bandwagon of this defense. Well, hey, it's never too late, man. You want to hop along? You want to hop on board? Like, the defense is for real. And it's like, hey, man, I'm trying to poke holes, guys. Like, me, I'm trying to sit here and poke holes, and I can't find really any holes to poke. So this defense does look like it is indeed for real. And so we'll continue to see how they handle. Again, it's not like, oh, well, season's over, right? We pack it up, guys. We made it. Again, as I said, we got 12 more games to play. They're going to be challenged. We're going to be sitting here talking in a couple of weeks, talking about, hey, you got to stop Jonathan Taylor. Hey, you got to stop this guy from scrambling. Hey, you got to shut down this wide receiver. Again, there's still going to be challenges 12 more times this season as the season plays on. But the fact that the Falcons could answer this challenge to the degree that they were able to do it means that you can have confidence. Even a hateful, spiteful skeptic, not clearly, I'm not talking about myself, but those people out there, that are like that, they answered this challenge. And so you can feel that confidence and that optimism that they will be able to answer those future challenges. But it wasn't just the defense that showed up in a major way in this game. It was the offense as well. And we'll break down, the great performances that we saw from Bijan Robinson and Drake London. And of course, we got to get into the Michael Penix pump meter. And we'll do that as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So the NFL season is here, and FanDuel wants to make sure you are ready every single week with this can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. All you got to do is put down $5, $5. And if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the FanDuel app. And FanDuel's giving you so many different ways to win with football, basketball, baseball, all of the sports, right? The FanDuel's got you covered. But when it comes to football, whether you're looking at spreads, you're looking at straight up money line bets, you're looking at same game parlays where you can bet a little, win a lot. You can put together different bets in the same game, or you're just looking at various player props. FanDuel's giving you all those opportunities to win. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to FanDuel.com right now and download the FanDuel app today, and you can get started. So let's get the Penix pump meter out of the way. For those of you new to the podcast, this has been a weekly thing that we do on these rapid reaction shows. This is sort of an evolution of the Kirk Cousins chaos meter that was bequeathed to us last year from Locked On Vikings. And there are 4 levels to the pump meter. This is to judge the performance of Michael Penix. And, the 4 levels are 0 pumps, 1 pump, 2 pumps, and 3 pumps, right? 0 pumps is kind of a nothing burger of a performance from the quarterback. 1 pump is a solid sort of game manager game. 2 pumps is sort of the peak performance from the quarterback, and 3 pumps is too many. There's too many pumps. You've gone too far. You've gone into the red. You can't do 3 pumps. That's the way it works. And if you don't understand what this reference is, go check out the Key and Peele sketch on YouTube, 3 pumps, and you'll understand what we're talking about. And so when we're evaluating Michael Penix's pump performance, how many pumps did Penix have? To me, like I'm on the fence, right? And again, it's always a challenge doing this immediately after the game, because like you really got to look at, to really get a gauge of what the quarterback did, you got to really watch the film. And so, I'm going to cheat and do what I did earlier in the season. This is kind of a 1.5 pump performance, like, because I don't think it's a standard 1 pump performance, but I don't think it's quite a 2 pump performance. It's like 1 pump and then like a little half pump, just a little half pump. We didn't get 2 pumps just because like it felt like Penix, rather than having that peak performance where like I thought Penix had a 2 pump performance against Washington, right? That was a kind of Penix was balling that game. And to me, this game, Penix, I thought played well. Don't get me wrong. I think the overall body of work was a solid performance. And that's what, 1 pump and 2 pumps gives you. But like, to me, he was more of a distributor, right? And again, maybe doing this media after game, you forget some plays. Maybe you're overly counting some of the second half misses that he had, that almost interception that he threw with like 2.5 minutes of the game that, Mike, what are we doing? What are we doing, my guy? The do-rag a little too tight in there. What was that decision making on that one? So it's one of those things where maybe I'm overvaluating that and I'm forgetting some of the really high level plays, but it just felt like he was more of game manager has the wrong connotation, but just more of a distributor. And again, that's nothing wrong with that. It's just hard for me to be like, oh, well, you were just kind of distributing, especially the Drake London and Bijan Robinson in this game. We'll talk more about those guys. And that's a 2 pump performance. So I'm going to go 1.5, but again, we'll watch the film. And if I feel like I need to go up or down, we can do that later this week and retroactively, adjust the pump meter. But, him being that distributor, he was able to get the ball into the hands of his playmakers. Bijan had a lights out performance. Drake London had a lights out performance. And in a lot of ways, this game kind of reminded me of a Sean McVay-esque type performance from Falcons offensive coordinator Zac Robinson, who we have given so much grief on this podcast over the last, 10 months. Although we have given Zac Robinson his flowers over the last 2 weeks, coming off that Washington game. And again, the initial reaction watching the game live was I think he had another well-called game. But the reason why I compare it to Sean McVay is because one of the highlights of the McVay offenses in the Rams was, Sean McVay's offenses were kind of like, we have a handful of star players and who's getting the football, whether we're talking about Todd Gurley or Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp and some of those guys, right? Brandon Cooks for that one season. And it's like, who's getting the football, but we know how to feature these guys. And to me, it was like Zac Robinson was trying to do that last year. And I didn't think he was that successful. Like, again, he did a good job with Drake London and Darnell Mooney. And obviously Bijan had a great season. But it wasn't quite to the degree that I think the Falcons envisioned when it came to, featuring all those guys and whatnot. And so to me, this game and the last couple of games have really sort of lived up to that vision, right? And when we talk about Zac Robinson, I know I'm not on Twitter really during the games other than just to get injury updates, but I'm sure there was a lot of criticism that I saw in passing and probably more that I didn't see of like, oh, the Falcons, play calling was way too conservative. And Zac Robinson almost cost the team the game and Raheem Moore's almost blew it and all that stuff. And again, I get where that sentiment comes from. People look at the 21 points in the first half, look at the 0, until the very end of the game in the second half. And they're like, oh, that's bad coaching. That's bad play calling. They got too conservative. Again, like their conservativeness, yes, it's certainly a valid criticism, but like, I don't think it's or it's a criticism. I don't think it's a valid criticism, right? Because like you're up against this Bills team. You don't want Josh Allen to have the football. You ran for 168 yards in the first half. Like, are you going to just we're just going to keep opening up the offense and throwing the ball a ton? And the clock is our friend. We want to milk as much clock as possible. We want to dominate time of possession, especially in the third quarter when the Bills dominated time of possession. It was like, we need to sort of rein this thing in and possess this football again at this point in time. And so like, to me, if you're going to say, yeah, they let the foot off the gas, like, yeah, man, what else do you expect them to do? Especially when you're dealing with, an injury to Jake Matthews. And do you want to get into the drop back passing game with Mike Jarrell as your starting left tackle in the second half of the game? And again, the Jake Matthews injury, he injured his ankle at the end of the first half. He got rolled up from behind and was declared out at halftime. And that will be something that we will have to pay very close attention to, because that has season-long ramifications if Jake Matthews misses any amount of time moving forward. And so that is a huge, huge potential blow to this team. Coming out of this game. So far, no update, and knowing Raheem, we won't get an update till like 3 weeks from now. But that is a major challenge. So, like, to me, I think you can certainly say, oh yeah, they were too conservative in the second half, but like, I'm not losing any sleep over them, because like, what else were they going to be, right? Just sitting there airing it out. Like, no, they're running screens, they're running the football, high percentage passes. Let's hang on to dear life, and let's not let Josh Allen, do Josh Allen things in this game. So yeah, be conservative, man. Like, don't overthink this, right? We would have been sitting here killing Zac Robinson. And he was like, let's just keep throwing the football, like, what are we doing here, guys? But they were able to run the ball effectively throughout this game, especially in the first half. We questioned that going into this game. It's like, I don't know if the Falcons are going to have as much success as I think people think, because the Bills have done a good job outside of that, week 1 game against Derrick Henry in the Ravens of stopping outside zone runs. And the Falcons were able to gash them with some big plays, similar to what Derrick Henry and the Ravens did in that week 1 game on some outside zone runs, right? Bijan finished this game with 238 all-purpose yards, 170 on the ground, 68 in the air, including had an 81-yard touchdown run in this game. Drake London was dominant in the first half. He finished his game with 10 catches, 158 yards, a touchdown. Should have had 2 touchdowns. Almost had one at the end of the first half, but got pushed out of bounds at the 1-yard line as time expired. And so had 16 targets, was clearly like, and so that's what I mean, where I go back to that McVay point, where it's just like the Falcons were clearly, we're going to run our offense to Bijan and Drake London, right? And like, the last time I can vividly remember a time when the Falcons did something similar goes back to that 2015 season in year 1 of Kyle Shanahan, where I remember that Cowboys game where the Falcons were down in the first half, and basically in the second half they're like, if Devontae Freeman or Julio Jones are getting the ball pretty much every single snap, and they were able to come back and beat the Brandon Weeden led Dallas Cowboys team, I believe, in like a week 3 game in that 2015 season. That was the first game I remember breaking down that game. But sorry for going on this tangent. But like, I remember that was the first game I was like, oh, this Kyle Shanahan guy is pretty good. So I'll be very curious, to go back and watch the film and be like, this is giving me some, 2015 Kyle Shanahan vibes. Watching Zac Robinson's play calling. So that will be something that will be intriguing. But, the main thing that stood out for this offense was the explosiveness. And again, some of it was just, Bijan being Bijan. Some of it was Drake London being Drake London. But some of it was the sort of intentionality that has been sorely lacking when it comes to designing explosive plays. You saw that with some of the play action passes that the Falcons had. We've talked for months, almost a full year, talking about where is the play action passing game. And again, it wasn't perfect in this game, but it was certainly, again, there's been seemingly steady progress there with a number of those big passes to Drake London. He finished the game with 4 20-plus yard plays, those explosive plays. Bijan had 4, Tyler Algier had 1. So you got 9 explosive plays in this game. So overall, again, if it hasn't been made clear to you guys, an incredible win for the Falcons. Hopefully this is the start of a brand new era of Falcons football. Again, I'm not ready to plant that flag like my Locked On Falcons insider was, 2 weeks ago, coming off the Washington game. We got to see it, again, or at least let me say, we don't have to do anything. I got to see it, as I said, but we saw it tonight. We absolutely saw it tonight, and it raises the standard for this team. And hopefully, they don't do the Falcons and let us down on the road against San Francisco next week against Kyle Shanahan. So we will see. You got to do it again, right? You got to stack wins, but it's October, baby. And it's like this team in October, man, they've been killing it in October these last 2 years. Again, we can't call it Kirktober. We got to come up with a new name. We got to workshop a name. Penixtober just doesn't come off, in the same way. So we got to work on something, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So, leave a comment. Let me know. Hit me up. Email me at lockedonfalcons@mail.com. Your suggestions for any, cringy names that we can come up for the month of October, where the Falcons, Falktober, again, we'll workshop it with how this team tends to look in October. And we'll see if this is the beginning of another sort of Falktober. Again, it's a placeholder for now. And then we'll see if they can, carry that momentum throughout the rest of this month and then into the future month, which is what they weren't able to do last year. Again, that's, it's still a long season. We still got 3 more months of football left to be played, but absolutely, as impressive a win. And, you guys deserve it, to ride the high, this fan base has been so hungry to see this team, play well. And I, again, part of my issue, as I said at the top, was like I felt like people were a little too quick to jump the gun and be like, "Yep, we're here, we're back, baby, we're there." And it was like, let's pump the brakes, guys. Let's pump the brakes. We got to see a little bit more. But now it's like, hey, man, I'm not going to stand in anybody's way. If you want to go, let's go. So great win for the Falcons. That's all I have to say. We'll be breaking down more of this game tomorrow and looking at some of the film. And then, of course, we got a quick turnaround coming off the short week on another primetime matchup against the 49ers next week on Sunday Night Football. So continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen, especially for those of you that are like, I want to hear this punk Aaron Freeman say positive things about the Atlanta Falcons. Well, guess what? You got to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts if you want to see that. If you want to see the impossible happen and me say good things about the Atlanta Falcons, come on. You got to be coming every day, guys. Again, at least for a week. So check us out here on Locked On Falcons on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to get the scoop on all the other things going on around the NFL, check out Locked On NFL, 2 shows daily. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.